Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good day. Today I'm just going to show you how to make a LeatherCraft pattern from scratch yourself for free. So the first thing that you're probably going to need to do this is the software that I use is called Fusion360. This is a free software if you're a hobbyist. If you're a student, you can get the education version, which is also free, but it gives you some extra features. And then if you're like a professional and you're making money using this thing, you're supposed to buy a license, which I think goes for about $400 or $500 a year. But really, this is an engineering software, and so for LeatherCraft, for hobby work, for simple design work, you can get away with that free license, and you're pretty much never going to need any of the features that are only available in the paid version. So what you want to do is go over to the link that I put in the description. This is just basically the web page for Fusion360 where you can register for hobbyist account. And once you have downloaded, made an account, and installed that, then you should be good to start designing. So the next thing that you're going to want to do is pretty much just sketch out what it is that you want to make. So what I'm going to be making today is just a sheath for this axe right here. So I've had this thing for, I don't know, probably 12 years now. It's a good axe, but the sheath that it comes with looks like it's made out of some kind of cheap oil tan leather. It's just kind of junky. I don't really like it. So I'm just gonna make a new one. So what I've done here is I pretty much just sketched out what the axe looks like. I've taken a couple of key measurements that we're gonna need to actually make the sheath the appropriate size for this thing, and I've also just kind of sketched out what I want the sheath to look like. So with this in mind, you can go ahead and open up Fusion360. Okay, so I've just pulled up Fusion here, and I've also got this pane on the other side that kind of shows basically just a model of what we're going to be working with. So just to give you a real quick idea of how Fusion works, when you first open it up, you'll have a view kind of like this. What I like to do is work on the front plane. So if you go up here, just select front. The reason for that is that when you go to move whatever you design over to a drawing, by default, it puts it in the front plane. And so if you're not already working in this space, your drawing is going to be in a weird angle, and you're going to have to move it around to actually get it to fit nicely. So it's just easiest if you click on front up here to make sure you're facing that plane, and then start working from there. So just to give you a quick idea of how Fusion works, it's pretty much an extrusion-based modeling software. And what that means is that you're pretty much just drawing shapes on flat surfaces and then extruding them outwards. And then there's other operations that you can do to boundaries and edges and things like that. But it really, really shines with making patterns like for LeatherCraft, because we can pretty much just work in this sketch plane and do almost everything that we need in there, which is really great because you can kind of draw it out just like you would on paper, and then you can extend it out and make all your holes and stuff like that. So it's really easy to do. So what we're going to start with is looking at this here. We're just going to make a box. I'm going to pretty much, like, I gave myself a little bit of an allowance here when I took these measurements, which you want to do, maybe round up just so that you have a little bit of extra space. So I'm just going to draw a box that's exactly this size. So if you go up here to create, so again, you want to first start by creating a sketch. So create a sketch, select the plane you want to work in. So we're working in the front plane, and I'm just going to make a box. So go down to create, rectangle, center rectangle. If you press tab, you can switch between the two fields here. So we're going to start with, this is 6 1/8 inches wide, so 6 point, what is an eighth? 125, is that right? No. Yes, it is. 125, 6.125 inches wide, and 3.125 inches tall. So we're just going to start with that, just a box. Then we're going to start carving this out just a little bit here. So this center point here is about 3 1/4 inches in. So we're just going to go up here, draw a line. 3.25 inches, and then that kind of just locks the distance, and you can adjust the angle. So we just want to go right to the middle there. And then it also, basically we just want to mark this point. That comes 1 7/8 down from the top. So what we'll do is if you just hover over that point, the end of that line, and then you go up, you can see that it's actually extending that line. So what you want to do is go all the way to the top, and then we'll come back down. And we're doing, my brain is not set up for math right now, so I'm just going to go 1 + 7/8, and then if you go times inches, it'll snap it to the units that you want to be working with, and just make sure that that's straight down. So what this is here basically is that point that we've marked. So the next thing that we're going to do, we don't necessarily want just like a straight triangle to that thing, so we're just going to come in maybe 1 centimeter, 1 cm, super easy. It almost knows what you're thinking, and then from there we're going to come back. And then I'm just gonna, if you press the T button now, you can trim away lines, and basically the way this works is it'll look at the line that you've selected to the nearest intersecting line. So that's here and here, and it'll basically delete everything in between. So we'll go 1, 2, there. Okay, that was something that we just used to measure, and then we can, I think, yeah, we can delete that as well. I'm just going to delete these because, and I'm just selecting them and hitting delete because we don't really need them right now. So looking at the shape of this thing, one of the things that I would like to do, I just want to round these out a little bit because they're kind of ugly. So what I'll start with is go up here to create, go down to arc and 3-point arc, and you select one end of the arc, so the top, then select the bottom end of the arc, and then you just pull it out, and you can see it actually just creates a little arc. So we just want kind of a really light arc just to kind of give it a nice look. So let's, how about there? That's not out very far. That might only be out 1/3 of a centimeter. And then we also want to do a similar thing on this one here. So we'll just come in a little bit. We don't want to push it, but if you look at the shape of an axe, and you know, we could measure this if we wanted to, but I'm feeling lazy. So just to give you an idea here, so if we had left it straight, we'd be kind of looking at, can you see that? Is that crazy? You see how there's a little bit of a, I don't know, there's an arc in there. So I do that. That's about 1/8 of an inch actually. So we're just gonna add a little bit of an arc going up. So just a little bit, just enough to give it kind of a nice look. There we go. Trim, we're gonna trim this outer line here because we don't need it anymore. And then the last thing I'm gonna do is, I'm just gonna round these bottom holes here. So if you go here to fillet, basically that just means round. I'm gonna select this one, we'll fillet it to maybe 3 millimeters, and then I also wanna select, maybe I'll just do that because it looks like we have another spare line here. And then I want to fillet this one as well, and we'll go to 3 millimeters too. So you select both. You can either select the edge in some case, or the corner in some cases, but I find that it's usually easier just to select both the lines leading up to the corner. And you can kind of play with this around a little bit. Maybe I want to make this a little bit softer, so I'll just go 15. And I'm just doing this by like looks right now, honestly. 5. Yeah, that looks pretty slick. So we're gonna leave it like that. Before we get too far ahead of ourselves right here, because if you look at what I've kind of sketched out, basically the way that this works is there's a front piece which will go on the face of the axe, there's a back piece which goes on the back, and then that back piece is going to extend up a little bit and fold over, and then I'm planning on putting button snaps there to close it. But the other thing that you need is in between those you actually need a liner piece along the front and the bottom, basically wherever there's a stitch line. And the reason for that with things that are sharp is that if you just stitch those pieces together when you put your axe in, particularly if it's sharp, you're going to cut through your stitches, this LeatherCraft piece is just not going to last very long. So we're going to add a bit of a liner just that the stitches go through. That's a separate piece. We'll worry about that a little bit later. For now, the point that I'm trying to make is the front and back are going to be pretty close to identical, at least for this part here. And so what we're going to do before we get too far ahead of ourselves is we're just going to copy this. Copy. So what I just did there, if you click on one line, it's going to select that line. If you double click on a line, it actually selects all the lines that are in that path. So I've double clicked on the line, selected them all, Control C to copy, Control V to paste, and then, why didn't it show? Sorry, let me just do that again, go back. Okay, Control copy. I'll just deselect that and then I'll paste. And then you can move that. So I'm just going to move it over to the side for right now because I don't want to, it's a way. We'll come back to that later. So now what I want to do just really quickly is I'm just going to finish this off. So you see how I kind of just have a bit of a funky design here. Totally going to eyeball this. I'm just going to say, all right, well, maybe this comes back about half of the way. So that's actually the easier way to do that is by default, Fusion marks the centers of each line. So you can just come to the center here and let's just say that, all right? Trim this, trim those. I'm going to fillet this real quick, just like that. And then, actually, here's what I'll do. I'll fillet these two just to give them kind of a, and if you select both, you can fillet them both at the same time. So that's what I've done here. And the last thing I'm going to do is just create an arc, just because I don't want it to be straight. So we'll do a little arc and we'll come in just a little bit. And then I'm just going to try this. I don't know if this will work, but one of the things you can do is force lines to be tangent to other things. So I'm just going to see what happens if I do this. Select that one, select that one. See how it just moved it a little bit? That looks nice. And then I'll do the same thing on this side. And basically it just shifts everything over just ever so slightly. One thing that we want to be careful about, it did move it a little bit. Okay, so the first thing is we want to lock this because we actually have these measured out, and so we don't want these to be moved. So if you just press this fix, unfix button and then select the things that you want to fix, it'll keep them from moving. Okay, just do that one more time. So tangent, tangent that, tangent this, great, that's looking pretty good. I'm going to unfix these just so that we can continue working with them. And I guess we'll just do this as well real quick. There, that's our front piece. I'm just going to finish it. I'll go back to it in a minute. I just want to have a look at it here. Okay, so the one thing I might do is make this a little sharper. We'll see if I can do that without screwing everything up. What if I did 15? Okay, so I'll just kind of Control Z, Control Y so you can see here. It didn't move our line that we had measured out, so that's good. I think that looks a little bit better. So I'm just gonna leave that like that. Good. So that's that front piece done. Moving over to this back piece here. You know what? What I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna delete this because it's too hard to find a common point now that I've changed this to make these two things line up. So I'm just gonna work from this one here. So what I'll do is I'm just gonna pick a spot to put the button. Let's just say there, right? So we'll just put a little circle there. Usually the holes that you mark for these are about, that's about right, are about 1/16 of an inch. So we're just gonna go 1/16 inch. That'll make a 1/16 diameter. Oh, sorry, it likes it if you do this times inch. So just so that you can see what I've done is just in parentheses 1 divided by 16 and then a little time symbol. And then just put an inch, and so that works out. So that's our hole for our button. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy all this and just paste it again. And we'll just move it. We'll move it over. So now what we want to do is take a minute to think about how much distance you need for that sheath to wrap over the top. And one of the easiest ways to do this, and you kind of have to think about how thick your leather is going to be as well, but I just like to take these tailor's tapes, knowing that it's going to wrap over about from there, just from the top. Just put your tailor's tape down and just kind of bring it over and say, okay, well, we want it to come about that much, leaving just a little bit of clearance. So that brings us to about 1.5 inches. So we'll just assume that that arc is going to measure about 1.5 inches. So then the next thing that we do is starting from this piece here, which is going to be our piece with the button, knowing that it's going to pretty much be our mirror of itself. We're going to go up to the very top here. That's 34.8 millimeters. We're just going to copy that. Then we're going to click, and then we're going to continue with that line, 1.5 inches, 1.5 times inch. That's a lot, isn't it? That's okay. And we're going to continue with that one more time. I know it looks funky, but math doesn't lie. So what that tells us is 1/16. Sorry, just a second. What that tells us is where we need to mark this, where this hole is going to be. And then everything else that we do is pretty much stylistic at this point. We can draw it however we want. We don't really have to worry about things lining up anymore, which is nice. So with that in mind, I'm going to delete all of these because we don't need them anymore. I'm going to delete this because we don't need that anymore. Remembering that this is going to be our back piece, not our front piece. We'll just start drawing this out. Yeah, so here's what we're going to do. You can select anywhere on this line. What I'll do for now is I'm just going to extend this out straight. And I'll just start deleting these because we don't because we don't need them anymore. Knowing that this is going to be coming up kind of like that, what we will do is here's what I'll do. I know that I want an arc to come off of that circle. So looking at about what I want that angle to start with, I'm just going to draw a line over top of it, and we'll just do that. We're literally just drawing a line across it. Then I'm going to trim. Now I'm going to delete this line, and that kind of gives us a termination, right, of that arc. What you can do is if you go to select a line by go to draw a line by pressing L, and you go to where a path ends, and you click and you hold, what it'll do is it'll actually continue the arc. So it'll actually, it'll keep basically things tangent at that intersection. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to bring this up and make it look kind of nice so that it sort of matches. We'll do that. That looks pretty good. Gonna trim here. See how that, no, that doesn't really does it. That doesn't really does it. Okay, I'm gonna delete this and do that one more time. You can see how you can kind of look and see if it looks nice. We actually want it to intersect probably about there, right? We want it to be mostly straight. Okay, so we just need a little bit more. So what I'll do now is I'm just going Control Z to go back. I'll just move that up a little bit. Just move it up a little bit. Delete. Last one. How's that? Sure, let's go with that. That looks fine. Okay. Cool. So then what we're going to do is, this comes in, I don't know, about 1/5 of the way. So we're just going to eyeball it, say that's about 1/5 of the way along this line here. I'm going to trim here, trim, delete. Again, we're just going to use that arc trick, so click and hold with the line, because we just want it to kind of come up a little bit. So like that. We're going to continue. We want it to come back just a little bit. What I'm going to do, just to keep things kind of orthogonal here, is, I'm going to use that tangent trick again just to make sure that this is nice and square. You see how it moved that circle though? We don't want that. So what we're going to do again is we're going to fix this. Tangent, good. You probably didn't see it, but it just moved this line. So if we go Control Z and then Control Y, you can see how it just moves ever so slightly so that it's nice and square. Unfix, good. We don't actually want to leave this looking like a circle because that's ugly. But just for now, I'm going to leave it. And again, I could have just left this fixed. So I'm just going to fix it again. Click that, fix it to that, or make a tangent. And then, okay, so trim that, and then we're just going to draw a line. We do want this to sit flat, rather than being kind of like curved, and so we're just going to draw a straight line across somewhere here. Again, just eyeballing it. Trim the top. Oh, not what I meant to do. Trim the top by hitting T, and then again, we're just going to do a fillet here. So select both of those by holding Control, and we can kind of come through and, okay, Okay, that's about as far as it's going to let us go. We can come through and clear things off like that. So there we go. That's it. That's the back piece. Okay. So that's done. One thing to keep in mind is that when we took our measurements for this, we took exact measurements. That is, this is pretty much the size of the axe. And what that means is that whatever work we do to add our stitch lines, to add that liner on the inside, we're gonna have to do on the outside of these. So what we're gonna do now, I'm just gonna move these over just a little bit, just so that we have a little bit more room. Oh, make sure I select everything here. Is that okay? Why is it being weird? Fuck. Okay, here's what I'm gonna do. Sometimes Fusion likes to get things stuck. And so I'm just gonna copy this, and then I'm gonna paste it and move it over. And I'm gonna delete this old one. I don't know what's going on, but Fusion likes to get weird sometimes. What I'm gonna do now is, if you double click on this and click on offset, what that'll do is it'll actually trace the outside, keeping everything kind of nice and orthogonal. I mean, if you go out too far, it'll start to look really funky. But we just want to basically extend this out a little bit so that we can add our stitch line, and then on the other side of our stitch line, add basically the edge of our leather piece. So the seam allowance that I like to use is 3/32 of an inch. So just wants to go minus 3/32 of an inch. So that's where our stitch line is going to be. We also need to add extra seam allowance for the outside, for basically the edge of our leather piece. So we're just going to do that again. Oh, okay. So it doesn't actually let you, do an offset from an offset. So what we need to do is select that original one, and we'll just go out 3/32 times 2, or you can go 6/32 times inch. And so you can see that's basically just double that seam allowance. So that's good. And we're just gonna, real quick, we're gonna do the same thing with this one here. So 3/32, good. And just to show you that it works the same way, I'll select that again, and we'll go 6/32 times inch. So there we go. So those should be the same size now. I'm actually not going to worry about stitch lines for this, and you'll see why. All that matters is that these are the same size on the outside, so that they'll line up nicely. So with that in mind, we're just going to work on this now. So the first thing that we need to do is we're going to have to add a extra piece for that liner. So what I'll do here, we're going to do our first extrusion in just a minute. Actually, what I can do right now, we can do our first extrusion. No, let's make our stitch line first. Okay, so let's just say that we want our stitch line to start here, and we want it to go back to here, which I think makes sense. So we've deleted those breaks there. We'll just delete the rest of this line because we don't need it anymore. And then what we want to do is we'll just go C for circle, and we want to add a 1 millimeter circle here. 1 millimeter. It needs to be on this line. And so you'll see why, but what's really important is that we start our circle at the beginning of a line. This line has to be continuous, and then there needs to be a point at the end of the line that we want it to stop at. So now that is done, the last thing I'll do is I'm just going to draw a line for our extra stitch line piece. So let's just say we want this to come out 3/32 of an inch. So we'll go, because that's our typical seam allowance, 3/32 of an inch. We want it to continue off of that line. So you see how it's kind of snapping to tangent there. So we want that. And then what we're going to do is just also keeping things tangent. We're just going to go out like that. Okay, trim, 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 trim. And then we're going to delete this line because we don't need it anymore. That's pretty much just to mark where our liner piece is going to end. Same thing over here. We're just going to go 3/32 because that's our seam allowance. Make sure that we're snapping to tangent. And then we're going to want to make sure, again, that line is orthogonal. So one way, the other way. Good. Trim, 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 and then delete this one. Okay, we are ready. We're ready to do our stitch line, and you'll see how easy this is in just a minute. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to select this. So basically, with Fusion, when you select on the inside of lines, it will select everything that is bound. So it's going to select, I've selected here, so it'll select everything inside of these lines, and any shapes that are enclosed within those lines, it's not going to select. So we don't want to extrude out without this circle just yet. So I'm going to hold Control, and I'm also going to click in that circle. Okay, so that's selected basically our entire leather piece that we're going to need for that liner. Then what I'm going to do is press E, stands for extrude, and 1 millimeter. So just one. Good. So the first time you do an operation like this on a sketch, what you will notice is that the sketch disappears. You just want to go over to here, this sketch drop down, press that little arrow, and then you want to make that visible again. And then what you'll find is that this body that you've created is now visible underneath the underneath that body's drop down list. So I'm going to select this body just by clicking it in the drop down list. I'm going to press M for move, and then we're just going to extrude that back. Move it back, sorry, and just 5 millimeters, doesn't really matter. We just don't want it to be on that sketch line anymore. Okay, next we're gonna select, I can just make that body invisible for now. And if you want, you can name it, so let's just do that. We'll call it liner. Liner, that's probably not the right word for what I want it, for what I'm trying to say, but that's fine. Okay, so now we want to extrude out this front face here. So we're gonna select this part, the inner part, we're going to select this. Basically, we want to select everything. Everything that's not a stitch hole. Sorry, we want to select everything, including the stitch holes, but we don't need to select holes that we don't want. So for instance, this is pretty much just a marker for where we want to punch our hole for the snap. So we're not going to select that. We're going to select all of the other boundaries. We also want to select the stitch hole here, that first stitch hole. E, again, extrude 1, there's our body, that's our axe face. I'll just minimize that, that sketch just for a second here. That's it. We'll name this, call it face, and then make that other one visible. Okay, that's fine. So what I'll do, because I want this to be kind of in the front, is I'm just going to make these both invisible again. Last thing I'm going to do is just extrude this. Because there's no stitch line on this, we can just go ahead and extrude it. So we're just going to select that, press E, 1, good. And now we have all our bodies. We'll just call this back real quick. Back. What I want to do is move this basically to the same position that this is in, because when we extrude our stitch holes, we want it to go through all of the bodies at the same time, just because it's easier, because then we don't have to do math more than once and everything just kind of fits nicely. So what I'm going to do is select this body, and it's easiest to select it under the body's drop down, and the reason for that is if you select just this, sometimes it'll just select the face, and then when you go to try to move it by pressing M, it thinks you're trying to move the face, and that doesn't, you know, basically you're trying to do an extrude operation. So we don't do that. Easiest way to do this is just, again, to select like that. So select the whole body, press move. What I like to do is go point to point. And because we know that the geometry of at least some of this is the same, we can select a common point. Let's try this one. Select that first. And then we're going to go to the same point on this. And I believe that works. Yes, it does. That works. That's amazing. So then we're going to move this back 10 millimeters just because we want it to be on the back. So this is kind of all our LeatherCraft pieces lined up with each other. So that's kind of cool. And you can see that that is lined up perfectly. I can make that sketch invisible now. And what I'll do, just to give you another view here, is we'll just look at shaded with hidden edges, so you can see that that piece is just on the inside there. Okay, last thing we're going to do here is we just want to extrude this hole. This is what makes Fusion really amazing. So what I've done there is I've just done a long click, so I hold it down. You hold it down when you want to select something that may not be the first thing on the thing that's closest to you, because if you just click, what it'll want to do is it'll want to select that face, because that's the thing that's closest to us, the viewer, right now. So being able to see the sketch, I'm just holding on that circle, you can just go through the drop down and it'll kind of just guess what you want to select, and you just click the thing that you do. So we want to select that stitch hole profile. I'm going to hit E for extrude. I want to go through front and back, basically just deleting that hole from all of these shapes. So what I'm going to do is two-sided. We're going to pull it out this way, and we're going to pull it back that way. And we've made our first stitch hole. Now, the rest of this is really easy. What you want to do is go up to Create, go down to Pattern, and then Pattern on Path. Features. So feature is anything that shows up in the history panel down here. So this is just so that you guys know, one of the things that's really cool. Sorry, I'll come back to what I was just doing. Just so you guys know, one of the cool things about Fusion is if you go down here, you can actually go back and you can see what you've done in the past. Not only can you see what you've done though, you can actually change what you've done. So if you have things here that are depending on a sketch you did way back here, you can go back in your history, you can change that sketch, and theoretically it should carry all of those changes through forward to where you are now. Obviously it doesn't work out perfectly all the time, but it's a neat feature and it does work out fairly well most of the time. Anyways, back to what we were doing. Create, pattern, pattern on path. We're going to select a feature because it's something that's showing up in the history panel. We're going to select that last extrude that we did, which was this, and you can see that it's highlighted now. And then we select a path. And so what we want to select for that is the reason that I said earlier that you need to make sure that your stitch hole is on a path and basically at the end of the path is now that we select this path, it's going to try and put stitch holes along that path. So what I like to do is start here, go to spacing, and if you know the size of stitching chisel that you're using, for instance, the one that I use is a Tandy Pro 2mm chisel. I've measured kind of the teeth per inch on that, and I've found that the distance between the tips of the chisels is 4.1 millimeters. So if you start by going to spacing and then under distance, 4.1 mm for millimeters, then you can just add them. So looking at this again, how many do we want? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You could do this forever until you get to the end. I just like to guess. So let's say, I'll guess we need 25. Not even close. 40. Close. So it looks like we actually need 39. So what you want to do here when you get to the end, where basically you've got either one right on it or your endpoint is kind of in between them, is you pick the one that's closest. So because this last one is kind of closer, we're going to just dial it back 1 and switch over now to extent. So what this does is it actually picks the total length of the total arc length of this path that you want to put your objects on. And then you can drag this. So we're going to drag it over to the end and you'll see it snapped. Snapped right to the end of that line. So that's super handy. One thing that you can do just to make sure that you're not way out of whack is switch back to spacing and see that now the whole spacing is actually just over 4.1 millimeters. You're not even going to notice. If you were to use kind of if you were to use a 6-tooth chisel, you might notice that one of them is a little bit off. But LeatherCraft is rough. It'll be fine. So yeah, that's it. You just hit OK. Look at that. Amazing. You've just made all your stitch holes in one operation for all of your pieces. That's it. That's it. So the last thing that I like to do, so I'm just going to make, before I start moving things around and getting things ready to print, I'm just going to make a new folder here. I'll call it Axe Sheath. Go figure. Axe Sheath. We're just going to open that up. I'm going to save it here. Save. Axe. Is that right? Yes, it is. Axe Sheath. Okay. Don't need this sketch anymore, so I'm going to make that invisible. So one neat trick that I've used just to make sure that everything lines up on a page is I actually have a template for a page sketch. Basically like what the size of a standard letter sized page is and also what the margins are within that. So usually what I do is I just go to an old pattern that has that. I'll go to edit the pattern just because in order to select and copy pieces of a pattern you need to be in edit mode. So double click that, hold control, double click this as well. I'm just going to copy it. Copy, easy peasy. Go back here, create another sketch, same plane, and paste. Where did it go? It's way over there. Okay. I'll put it somewhere close to the center. Done. And now I'm just going to try and line up all of these pretty much within that. So move. One thing to keep in mind is for things that are going to be mirrored, like in this case we've got a front piece and we've got the back piece, which is the same shape, but it's going to be mirrored. We actually need to rotate that piece around. So before I get too far ahead of myself, I'm going to move the liner over just so that's done. Get it on the page. There we go. We'll rotate it just because that's horrible. Maybe we won't. Maybe I'll keep it the right orientation. What is it, 90? Is it 90? What am I doing? Okay, we're just going to forget I did anything. Okay, there we go. That's good. Okay, so that goes there. What we need to do is actually rotate this. So if you select this body here and you press move, and you keep it on free move here, then it will kind of keep it in line, I believe, with the sketch axis. That is the axis that it was sketched on. So then what we're going to do is look up at it like this. You can see this little slider here for rotating. We're just going to move that over to 180 degrees. 180. You don't really have to like eyeball it and make sure it's right. As long as the numbers are right, then it's good. So yeah, that's that. Done. Actually, probably should have continued with that move and put it over on the page. Just gonna freehand it, move it over here. There, it fits. It fits. Good. It's gonna be a little bit tight when we're cutting, but that's okay. What I'll do is I'll just move. I'll move the liner up a little bit. Liner up, and we'll move this up just a little bit as well. Oh, good. Everything fits good. Now I'm going to get rid of that, or at least make it invisible, because I know everything's going to fit on a page. Save. Then go up here to File, and then go Create New Drawing from Design. It's going to automatically select all of these. You want to pick your sheet size. So I go for A4, which is the standard letter size in my country. And then we'll just, from scratch. So it'll actually open up a new file. It'll give the option to put something down. That's my full name. You want my social security number too. Anyways. So then we just drop it in, and you can see that I've kind of set up that other page so that everything fits within the margins, and indeed it does fit within the margins here. So we'll just drop it somewhere on the page. Hit OK. Again, you want to make sure that the scale is 1:1, because otherwise it'll be smaller than it should be. So just there, see? So 1:1, because then it'll actually print at full size. And then I like to delete everything else, except for a custom template that I occasionally use. But when you're using the default Fusion stuff, this is fine. Just make sure it's somewhat centered, because that's going to kind of minimize your chances of something printing outside of your printer's area. And that's it. That's the pattern done. So what we're going to do now is just save. It'll automatically name it after what your source drawing was, and then just add drawing afterwards. Export to PDF, yes. And we'll just go back here, add a new folder. We're going to call this Axe Sheath, of course. Axe Sheath, and save it. Good, done, finished, good to go. So here it is. Print. Make sure that you're printing the actual size. Done. That's it. That's your pattern done. Easy peasy. So I've tried a few softwares for LeatherCraft design, and this is the fastest, easiest, most foolproof thing I've found. The fact that you can go back and edit the history of your designs makes it so much easier, especially when you're working with potentially 5 or 6 different pieces that have the same stitch holes, and you've got to go back and fix all of those. So just being able to go back in the history, doing everything kind of on common drawings, super easy. I can't think of a better way to do this kind of work. So yeah, just practice. If you have any questions, please reach out, and let me know if you like this. I'd be happy to do more of these design videos in the future, but only if there's a demand for it. So thanks, and take care.